Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share about our work. So I'll be talking about fish, but a very different topic to Lee's great presentation. So I'm Wasseem Emam. I'm the founder of Ethical Seafood Research. We are a small nonprofit working to reduce fish suffering in aquaculture in the global south with a focus on Africa, in particular Egypt. That's where I'm from originally, and it's a big tilapia producing country. So I renamed the talk Changing Minds, not just water, because really it's a behavior change study that I'm presenting this time. Okay. So to set the scene, sorry, can I bring it closer? Yeah, okay. Yeah, like too short. So Egypt is a huge producer of Nile tilapia, and most of those are raised in semi-intensive systems, so ponds like you can see here. And actually, so obviously those kind of systems, we don't have any welfare standards or no certification, and a lot of the welfare issues are actually chronic. So the key word I've highlighted there is that chronic is it's not an acute pain like during harvest or slaughter, but low water quality can actually be a very stressful event in itself. I don't know how to do this. Okay. Yeah, so we carried out a study in 2024, and we visited a lot of farms across the Nile Delta, and we saw that actually water quality was often not that bad, but to kill the fish, but bad enough that was causing stress. And that's where we came up with the idea to carry out a behavior change study. And so we, obviously, as welfare scientists, we spend a lot of time talking about good conditions. And in the case of tilapia in a pond, we really do know what good welfare can look like from water quality perspective: dissolved oxygen, ammonia, temperature, the usual suspects. But we still don't know we still haven't figured out how to actually improve the conditions on the ground. So the first thing that we saw is that monitoring is irregular. Most farmers don't have any kind of testing kits, and they just use their eyes to judge water quality, which is clearly not an accurate method. And then even when they do have readings, it's often not interpreted accurately. And then we found that they're interpreting water in terms of survival and growth as opposed to how fish are feeling and experiencing. And lastly, that habits don't stick. So even when we give equipment or train staff, the momentum quickly fades away. So we were thinking that how do we design an intervention that can change behavior instead of just more training and training? So we borrowed a framework from Martin, Marx, and Cialdini called the ACE model. So they argue that most scientifically validated ways of changing behavior can be traced back to 3 core human motivations. So that's the ACE there, the accuracy, the idea that people intrinsically want to make the correct, well-informed decision. And so the way to activate the accuracy motivator is to compare the farmers to each other and to frame it in terms of loss, like what farmers are missing out on compared to others. Then you have C for connection, so that's the idea that people want to belong and they would like to have the approval of others, so that's activated through things like similarity and reciprocity. And then you have E for ego, so that's the idea that people want to act in ways that allow them to feel good about who they are. So the ego axis is reached through things like identity and consistency. And at the bottom there you have the 8th trigger. So that one doesn't sit under any one motivation because it kind of powers all 3, social proof. So people look to what those around them are doing to decide whether this is the right thing to do. So that kind of taps into accuracy, connection, and ego. Yeah. So just a point that is in tight-knit farming communities, the social proof can be a very powerful motivator. So obviously this gave us vocabulary that we didn't have before and a way of understanding what can help farmers to change their behavior. So this is like the engine room of the design. So I've put some examples on the left there of some of the barriers that we were seeing on farms on the ground. And in the middle, I put the motivator that we were using. And then on the right, you have the concrete moves that we tried to do. So if I take the first one, that's often referred to as a status quo bias. So most people prefer to stick with what they know, the familiar. That could be categorized as an accuracy problem. And in that case, we use, like I mentioned, the idea of loss framing in terms of loss and comparison. Here's what poor water is costing you. Here's what the farm next door is doing, and they're doing better. The next one is like reluctance to lead. So if when you have farmers who don't really want to take on a more leadership role in their community, you can use the ego lever. So for this one, you remind them that they were chosen specifically as innovators and that they made a public commitment, because studies have shown that when commitments are made out loud, they're more likely to be upheld. And that, I'll just highlight the fourth one there, fading motivation. That's often one of the real killers of these programs because as we know, motivation fades quickly. So the way to tackle that would be regular feedback, there's recognition, and you can have a mentorship program between farmers. So the main thing to take away is just that none of these are obviously biology related, or it's interventions about people. Yeah. So what did the program actually look like? It's quite a simple loop. You know, there's monitoring, interpreting, acting, and reinforcing. The farmers would record water quality regularly, and then an advisor from our team would help them interpret their readings and interpret it in terms of fish behavior, fish condition, health, and so on. And then that would usually lead to a corrective action because water quality was often suboptimal. So they would adjust feeding, run aeration, exchange water. And then that last one there, the reinforce, is really key because that's, I think, where lots of similar initiatives struggle. So by giving feedback, providing recognition, establishing peer sharing, which can be as simple as just having a WhatsApp group. That's what we had. Like, so all the farmers from one cluster would communicate regularly and share their scores, and so that helps habits to stick. And I just put at the bottom there that we tried to incorporate the behavior into the design. So we grouped people by their welfare scores initially, and we tried to think of farmers that would have natural points of connection. So I just have a short clip here. I'm hoping it's going to work, just because I think it's nice footage of the work we were doing.
أنا إبراهيم جودة مسؤول مبيعات ودعم فني شركة أكوافيت. المشروع ده بيمثل يعني طفرة في الاستزراع السمكي في مصر. من أهم النقاط في الاستزراع السمكي هي جودة المية وارتباطها بكل الممارسات وكل الإجراءات اللي بتتاخد في المزرعة عموما. بدأنا نلاحظ تغير برضو ملموس في الفكر بتاع المزارع، لأن كان أوقات كتير بنروح على المزرعة نلاقي المزارع بنفسه هو بيعمل قياسات جودة المية. الموضوع بالنسبه له كان في الاول مش باين ليه اهميه قوي، ولكن بعد كده لما بدا يحصل ضربات ويبدا ان هو يكتشفها بدري ويبدا ان هو يعالجها بدري، الموضوع بقى بالنسبه له لا مهم. بينزل المزرعه وبينزل بدري وبياخد قياسات الديسولفد اوكسجين. القياسات دي بعد كده بيترجمها ان هو سواء قياس لو كويس او مناسب بيدي العلف بتاعه الطبيعي، لو مش مناسب ممكن ان هو يقلل العلف للنص او ممكن ان هو ما يعلفش اليوم ده خالص. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
So it's just nice to show you some of the settings that we were working in and what it looks like on the ground. But did any of this actually shift water quality? And as I alluded to, yes, because it was actually in pond systems, it's fairly straightforward to shift parameters. But because we were repeatedly assessing and visualizing the changes, farmers were able to see where their actions were leading to improvements. So I put here a case from one of the farms in our study. But this is actually reflective of a number of the farms. So they would start off with something that's suboptimal. It's not killing tilapia, but definitely they're not doing great. So in a lot of the farms we saw this sort of improvement. And the same in, I can't scroll. Okay, anyway. But the idea there is that through regular monitoring, we're able to catch lots of these events before they got worse. Am I on the next slide? No. I can't control the mouse. Can you? Is it this? Oh. There we go, okay. So the single most important result for us was definitely not about water quality or the welfare scores that I showed there. It was definitely all about the farmers themselves. So we saw 4 things shift. We saw farmers started to see water quality in terms of welfare and how the fish experience it. They also started to ask better questions, so not just what we were telling them to do, and they were starting to understand the link between ammonia and nitrite and the various nitrogen cycles even. Sometimes we're seeing real interest. We saw farmers starting to take their own proactive decisions without advisors being involved by the end of the study. And of course, the ones that kept the kits, for now, they seem to be buying their own reagents and continuing to monitor for the farms around them, which is exactly what we want to see. And I just wanted to highlight here that actually behavior change itself can be a very effective welfare technology if you implement it properly. So if we had done that in that 1,000-farm study that we did, we could have had a very big impact. So that's what we want to do as the next step of the program. And we're also implementing that within the extension services that they have in Kenya. That's another place that we work. And we're also trying to incorporate behavior change elements into the code of practice that we're developing with the Kenya Bureau of Standards on tilapia farming. So I just wanted to leave you with 4 things. 1, this idea that chronic welfare stresses is also something that in aquaculture we don't think about as much as acute, but in the smallholder systems it can actually be a very important factor. The gap of behavior, I don't think we talk enough about how to incorporate behavior change into our work, so that was a big learning for me personally, and how to use frameworks like ACE and use motivation can be a behavioral, having things like scores and so on can be a motivator. And just mentioning that obviously we have an opportunity now to improve systems before they intensify, which is what we're seeing on the ground. So we can change the water, we know how to do that, but if we can change the farmer, we can reach a lot more fish at scale, and that's working with the system instead of against it. And if you treat it as fish welfare as a behavior change problem, instead of a biology problem, it's actually one of the most high impact things you can do. So thank you for listening.